Hey guys, welcome back to another video, and if you are new to my channel, my name is Cody and I am a freshman at Parsons School of Design. I mainly make videos about thrifting and styling those thrifted clothes, but today I'm going to be showing you my portfolio that I used to get into Parsons School of Design, as well as Pratt Institute, and possibly one or two other schools. I only submitted photography for my portfolios, and I know quite a few other people who did that as well, so if you are worried about that, like you feel like you should add drawings and paintings, of course those things will help your odds, but it's not essential for you to have those types of mediums. Unless you're planning on going to a school like RISD, then you're probably going to need to be able to show some more fine art details, but it's not essential that you submit anything other than just photography, which is what I did. Now, just because I submitted my portfolio over a year ago, I'm not going to be able to show you step by step how to apply, but I'm going to be able to walk you through the website a little bit, at least the website that Parsons, Pratt, and a couple other schools use. So I'm now screen recording, and I'm going to start out on the Parsons portfolio, show you my photography, and then at the end show you my Parsons challenge. So the first thing that you have to do for the Parsons portfolio is have kind of like an artist statement about your Parsons challenge. I'm going to read this and put this at the end of the video, but I don't want to have a whole chunk of just kind of like pointless reading in the middle of this video. And so if you want to listen to that, you can skip to the end of this video. But basically all you do is you write about your process and what it meant to you and how you kind of did this challenge. I'm going to talk more about mine, which will give a little bit more answers to some questions you might have in a little bit. But I'm just going to move on to my photography. Now that I'm already halfway through the school year at Parsons and have submitted this application like a year ago, obviously these aren't going to be to my standards now, so I'm going to probably just talk about which ones I'm still proud of and which ones I probably would have left out. So this first picture is a picture I took in New York, and I really do love this picture, especially because of the camera that I used with it. For a lot of these pictures, I actually used this plastic toy camera called the Holga 120N. If you are unfamiliar with it, it shoots 120 film, which is just a pretty big negative compared to 35mm film. But I'm just going to read the little caption I wrote about it. This picture was taken on my plastic toy camera, the Holga 120N. I was walking near Wall Street in New York City. There were so many unique pairs of lines and repeating shapes in this scene. The sharp angular lines and sparse horizontal lines send the eye in every which direction. I think it is interesting how the film was corrupted in the top left corner, because when the viewer's eye is drawn to the upper left, their eye is quite literally being drawn to nothing and then back to the clear center of focus. So I do think it is very important to include a lot of art vocabulary, but I feel like a lot of these ones that I'm going to be talking are very overdrawn, kind of like. Obviously, it is important to point out things in your work instead of just being like, I like this picture. You should kind of explain why you like that picture and what initially drew you to it in the first place, but I don't think it's important to use some huge, or not huge, but just use so many art vocabulary words. My teacher calls it art talk or art speech or something. Also, I want to note that a lot of these titles are very dumb, but I also think that is another thing that is not really that important. Obviously, you should include titles and you should try to brainstorm some, but it's really not going to be like a make it or break it deal as long as your photography or as long as your pieces are good. So I titled this one Where the Trains Converge, and I said this is a 35mm color photo I took while changing trains in Paris to go to Versailles. This photo is pretty representative of my architectural photography due to my observations of repeating shapes and leading lines. If I would go back to change anything, I would have got lower to the ground and tilted the camera more sharply up. Since I was using a 28mm lens, it would have exaggerated the height more with more intense converging vertical lines while reducing empty negatives or reducing empty space at the bottom. However, I'm still really happy with this and how it turned out and its ability to pull the viewer's eye towards the background and push it back through the rest of the frame. So I did use quite a few art terms, I guess you could say, in there. So at parts it was a little bit overdone, but I do think that when I included the part about the 28mm lens and what it would have done if I were to got lower, it really showed that I kind of had an understanding of wide-angle lenses and what it would have meant to get lower and how that would have affected the rest of the image, because it kind of shows that I have the ability to think a little bit further ahead without having to actually do it. I can kind of predict outcomes. It's important to like recognize that your work is important to you and recognize that you are proud of your work, but also it is a really good idea to kind of critique yourself, because nobody wants a person who thinks they have all the right answers and doesn't need to grow in any way, because that's what you do in college, is you grow and you learn. And so if you kind of show that you know what could have been better or what could have worked in the future, I think that really would help your chances. This photo is called Boxed In, and I said this was a 4 exposure picture I took while on my senior trip in Paris. I took it using a Holga 120N, where I took the picture as I normally would, and then took 3 more exposures, each time rotating the camera 90 degrees. This is a technique I've been experimenting more with ever since. The reason I admire double exposure so much is the interesting shapes and intersection of lines that occur. It involves a level of pre-visualization and a willingness to take risks and experiment with what can be made. So that's another thing I would recommend as well. If not only if you are a technical artist, like you like drawing and painting, but even if you are a photographer, whether it's film or digital, I would encourage you to experiment with mediums within that. And so this wasn't really experimenting necessarily with mediums, but it was definitely experimenting with technique. I did something called a double exposure, which is something I prefer to do when I take pictures with the Holga camera. And so I basically tried to explain that I took a picture like this, and on the same negative, I flipped the camera this way, I flipped the camera upside down, and I flipped the camera one more time 90 degrees, and each time I took an exposure. I can show you what the bridge would originally look like, because the reason I wanted to go there was it's the bridge from Inception, but when I did this, it kind of showed a willingness to experiment while doing something like filmography, which can oftentimes get expensive. I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but just experiment within your mediums, whether that's just by technique, or if it's something more technical, like if you're a painter, experiment with different types of painting, or different materials to paint with. This next title is really dumb. It is called Littered with Glitter, and I said, this is just one of the shots from a series of portraits I did with people and glitter. I thought it was interesting how the glitter accentuated her neck and created a disconnect between her head and the rest of her body. This is another picture where the subject came to look less like a human than some type of artificial intelligence. The symmetry in her face, offset by the messy hair and uncoordinated use of glitter, questions the reader about what could be happening. I don't really know why I included that part at the end. That really didn't make any sense to me now reading it. I really like this photo, but I'm not really sure if I would have submitted it looking back at it now, but hindsight is always 20/20. This next one is called Piece of the Puddle. That was so dumb, like piece of the puzzle. Anyways, I said this photo I took while in New York City using my Holga 120N. I did not really go to New York with a lot of ideas of what I wanted to photograph, but I knew I wanted to take a picture through a reflection of a puddle. My dad and I walked around for miles to find the perfect one until I got this. I like it because it almost has a collage-esque element to it. The building almost seems to have been cut and pasted into that spot. I love making digital collages of photos for friends' birthday cards or school projects. It allows me to see an array of images I have taken and arrange them based on theme, color, and storytelling capabilities. Now, I still really do enjoy this photo. I don't think it's the most visually striking, but I did like how I kind of talked about the collage aspect of it, because I still think that is true. It does kind of look disconnected, almost as if it was superimposed there. And I think in a way, obviously, I don't think reflection photography is that unique of a thing, especially with nature photography, but I do think it does include ideas about how I notice things and what vision I may have had. Even though I said I didn't have a lot of ideas of what I wanted to photograph, I said, but there was this one shot I wanted to get, and the fact that I pursued it and took the time to go after it. Now, this is a digital and film hybrid collage. The portrait of the girl is is a digital picture, but the one behind it was a black and white film photo. I really like to do double exposures in camera with my film cameras, but it's also really fun to do them in Photoshop, and so this is one I did, and I titled it Headspace. I said this was a black and white film photo I took in New York City, blended with the portrait I took on a digital camera. Usually I like to do double exposures in camera, but this was an experimentation I was working on. I love how it blends from this weird negative filter on the left into the normal black and white look on the top right. It speaks about our thought process not always being linear or seeing things in black and white. If I could have changed anything, I would like to have taken the headshot with the same film camera on the same negative, but this allowed me to learn more about skills in Photoshop and experiment with arrangement of images. So I was basically explaining what I was trying to tell to you guys, but I do like how I said at the end that if I would like to have done this on the same camera, but I also like that I included that I was talking about working with Photoshop and working with kind of like basically digital collage by saying arrangement of images. But it is important to note that if you do know any applications like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, or anything like that. This photo is called End of the Line, and I said this was taken on 35mm color film in London at the train station where Harry Potter had been filmed. I love how elongated this photo feels and how the architecture up above tapers perfectly where the man is standing with his suitcase. This photo could also be strong in black and white, but I like the subtle blue. The curved vertical lines give a feeling of height and dominance that I wanted to emulate with the long, narrow crop of the frame. Now, I do really enjoy this photo, but mainly the reason I included it was because within my major at Parsons, I am a communications design major. The way online it says that there's kind of like subcategories to comm design, and the one that looked most appealing to me was advertising art, and so that's something I really do want to pursue in the future. And so the reason I included this was it felt a little bit more like an advertisement, like not as fine arty. Like obviously I think it is a fine art photo, but I think that it kind of has some qualities of like an advertisement. This is a portrait that's called Split in Two, and I said this was a quick photo shoot I did with a friend. I convinced her to walk down the street with me because earlier I had seen some pink flowers I thought could be interesting to incorporate into a headshot. But then I saw these lines of light made from the sun shining through the fence and knew I wanted to split right down the middle of her face. If I could have gone back and changed something, I would have taken from a higher vantage point to get rid of the distracting object in the top left of the image. The two important things that I said in this kind of caption was that I was able to kind of like think on my feet, and because I saw these lines shining through the fence, that I knew I had an idea of what I could do with that. So I think that is really important, being able to actually say that you went out and to do a photo shoot, but then something else piqued your interest or you wanted to experiment with. And again, I think it is important to critique your work because I do like this photo, but I think it has a car in the top left corner and is really distracting and I don't like it there. And so like I said, going from a higher vantage point would have been more successful. And this is a self-portrait. I don't really know why I included this. I still think it's pretty, but it's called I Look, and I said, we have a mirror upstairs by a window, and every time the sun shines through, these colorful rays are projected against my bathroom door. I used my front-facing phone camera to frame the beam on my face and then pulled up my DSLR to snap this shot. Since then, I have tried shooting more, but the colors are always too faint. What I enjoy about this picture is the super close crop where the viewer only has the eyes piece together my expression. I also love the texture for my hair, eyebrows, and the skin that makes this photo especially stand out to me. It's kind of interesting that I included that I was using my phone to kind of help myself, like as a digital tool, not as the digital tool. And so I guess that's important, but I don't really think anything else was that important. This next one is called The Eiffel Towers, and I said a double exposure on my Holga 120N of the Eiffel Tower. I only tried this shot once and was incredibly surprised when the two lined up the way they did. While on my trip, I was really focused on taking new and interesting shots of iconic pieces or places to show my way of thinking and responding to my environment. And using my film camera is definitely my favorite way to get inspired and produce images like these. A lot of people think it is hard to get images of well-known places without being super cliche, but oftentimes the only thing limiting is their creativity. Now that was a drag against people, and I probably would not have said it like that again, but I do like the way that I talked about trying to respond to my environment again, like I was talking about a little bit earlier with the puddle picture, I believe. But this was another double exposure where I took the picture regularly, and then I flipped the camera 180 degrees and took the picture upside down, and how they lined up perfectly. I just thought that was really cool, and so I mentioned that, but I don't really know what else I could say about it. And this last picture is called Train of Thought, and I said this was taken on my Holga 120N while on the subway heading into Brooklyn to do a college tour. It is interesting because it's easy to tell what it is, but there are components that the viewer gets to decide what may or may not be happening. I love the extremely dominant yet cut off vertical line in the center and the angled line stretching from the center to the top corners. Then there are all these repeated curved lines that push the viewer's eyes into the center and then back out following the lights. I would be interested to try this photo again, except using 2 or 4 pictured double exposure. I don't know if my description was very helpful. It didn't seem very helpful, but I'm just glad that I guess I was kind of using kind of my observation with the repeating lines. I don't think that was a great description of why I enjoyed this photo, but c'est la vie. And lastly, I included this California snapshots video that is posted on my channel. You can go find it if you want to see it. I'm not going to include it in this video, but I did submit a link to that, and I said pictures from my road trip through Northern and Central California. I took a rapid series of pictures, edited them all the same way, and then sped them up in Final Cut Pro. I rarely do artistic videos like this one on my channel, but I'm always interested in expanding my comfort zone and posting videos that people may not exactly be subscribed to me to see. I guess the only important thing about that is talking about wanting to go out of my comfort zone and just kind of doing my own thing. But now I'm going to show you my Parsons challenge and kind of explain it a tiny bit as I go. Basically, if you don't know what the Parsons challenge is you basically take one piece from your portfolio and then you make an entirely new piece inspired by that other one. Now, if you want to, you could do, like, if you say you are a photographer, you could have a photo from your portfolio and do another picture inspired by that, but I think you will impress them way more if you go from one medium to the next. So say you go from photography to video, or photography to painting, photography to fashion, or vice versa, like fashion to video, anything like that, as long as you aren't doing the same medium. Obviously, I know people who did that, but I think it is just more wise to show a little bit wider of array of talent, or wider array of experience with other mediums, because they want to see someone who is well-rounded, not just niche to their one field. So this is the picture that I used for my inspiration, and I called This Illusion. I almost called it Disillusion, but I guess I titled it This Illusion. And I said, this is the image being used for my Parsons challenge. One of my favorite aspects is how it is hard to tell when certain lines end and where some begin. I'm really happy we decided on a white sweater when doing this, so she could blend in with the background and become part of the green screen. If I could go back and change anything, I would have kept more space above her head, but I also enjoy how it was cut off and makes her feel even more tall and dominant. So basically for this photo shoot, I used a looped GIF using a projector. We started with some other things. We started with some Van Gogh paintings, and just a few other things, and eventually got around to just doing some optical illusions. And I got this picture and I absolutely fell in love with it. I still really enjoy this photo, and I knew that I wanted to do a video using the same technique, using the green screen as well as using the GIF optical illusion. And I did the entirety of my Parsons challenge by myself. I did all the setup, the editing, and filming, and it was pretty much just self-portraits using video and using this projector. There are parts of it I think are really cringy, but I do really like the skills that I showed, not only with green screen, but with storytelling, I guess, and composition. And so I'm just gonna play it right now. And for the caption of this video, I said, after realizing I would be stupid for not applying to Parsons, I began working on this video, knowing I had to show what I am capable of creating. My strategic angling of the projector, camera, and various lighting sources stems from my work with YouTube. Every Sunday, I post a video on various topics related to fashion, everyday life, and occasionally a stop motion. On January 13th, my computer crashed and I was unable to edit my video and work on this. Though it does not feel completed, I am still really happy with how it came out. Some of the supplies included green screen, projector, green light bulbs, glass prism, green paint, googly eyes, and my phone's macro lens. Right now, I really enjoy working on creative problems alone because it allows me to learn by doing and it's convenient. But as I enter the college landscape, I'm excited to collaborate with other students, and I think New York City is the absolute best place to do do that. And one other thing you can do with your Parsons challenge is I only did one photo, but I believe you should do at least 2 to 3 are your process photos. And so this was a process photo I did when talking about the macro eye shot setup. I said, this is how I set up the macro shot of my eye. I used an attachment for my phone's camera that had lenses for fisheye, wide angle, and macro capabilities. The green lights enabled so I could key away certain tones and spots on my eye to play around with layering clips. The mirror helped me so that I could 1, reflect the green light more effectively, and 2, watch my phone screen to make sure I got specific targeted shots of my eye while remaining in focus. This is something I talked about in that self-portrait I included earlier, where I was using my phone or like a mirror to be able to use, but I don't have that ability on my camera to flip the screen out, so you have to get more creative and have to problem solve when you're working by yourself. That is why I included in the caption of the video that I do enjoy working by myself, because it allows me more creative freedom, and it allows me just to experiment and come up with solutions to problems by myself. Okay, so that was everything in my Parsons portfolio, and now I'm going to move on to my Pratt portfolio, which is also just photography. I'm going to skip over the ones that were in my Parsons one, just because you've already seen them, and just show you the new ones. And then I guess I will just go through every other application I had. So this was another photo called Repent, and I didn't actually include long descriptions about this, which I definitely should have. I got into Pratt, so it wasn't a problem, so it is not entirely necessary. If you are worried about your work, though, I would highly recommend that you do write longer captions about why you included things in your portfolio or why you captured them if it's photography in the first place. I just said this photo was taken in a small church in Paris with 35mm film. I'm glad I at least noted that it was film and not just digital, but I should have talked more about what captured my eye in the first place. This photo is called Train Stopped, and I said this picture was also taken at King's Cross Station, London, using 35mm color film. I thought the long crop worked well to create the feeling of vastness the viewer could get lost in. So I do think that is true because it was a vertical shot. I very much do like really long and narrow images. I think it just has a really like elongated feel to it and just makes it feel like it can go on longer. So I'm glad I did include that. This one is called Flowered Girl, and I didn't even include any caption about it. My photography teacher at the high school didn't actually like this photo, but I just had, I don't know if it was just the color or the expression in her eye, but I really did enjoy this photo. I don't think it is as strong as some of my work now, but I really do like the color of it, so I included it. This photo is called Off the On-Ramp, and it said, this homeless man kept walking back and forth up and down these steps right by the Santa Monica Pier in Los Angeles. I knew I had to wait for the perfect moment for him to align himself down the middle. I don't think I would have included this photo now, but I do like that I talked about how I was waiting and was patient with my surroundings when knowing that an image would be stronger, because if he had been a little bit off-center, I don't think it would have been as strong as an image. So I'm glad that I included that I was patient and waited for a moment I wanted to capture. This photo is called Circling New York, and it said, this photo was taken during my second trip to New York City, days before touring Pratt. I was shooting with 35mm film at the southwest corner of Central Park. I was going to take pictures from the Mandarin Oriental to get an aerial shot of Columbus Circle and snag this photo on the way down. I think I should have, again, included more information about the photo itself, not about my trip that created the photo. I don't think it's that important that I mentioned that I was touring Pratt or that where I was necessarily in New York City. I think I should have talked more about, you know, I can't come up with it on the spot right now, but the moodiness of the fog in the distance, or the fact that it was wet outside, so there's kind of reflective qualities on the street. I think I should have talked more about specific details of the image and not about my trip. I called this one the Manhattan Branch and didn't say anything about it. This was a film photo, so I should have mentioned that. It was taken with my Holga camera again, and I should have talked about how dramatic that tree felt and how the corners were a little bit blurry to bring it into the center. But I didn't say anything, which obviously I got into the school, so it's not that big of a deal. But I would highly encourage that you do write longer captions. This next one is just, you're here, now what? And it's just this sign that I captured. I don't think I would have included this now. I still enjoy this photo, but not for a portfolio. This one was called Stargaze, and it again was another one of those series of using people and glitter, so I should have mentioned that. I should have talked about, because I included the other girl with glitter as well, so I should have mentioned how they were related and talk about some qualities of this. And I titled this one Girls Will Be Girls. I don't think I should have included this one necessarily. If I was thinking about advertising art, then it would make more sense just because it kind of looks like a bra advertisement, but I just don't think I would have included this again. Also, for the Pratt portfolio, it says BFA in Writing and BA in Critical and Visual Study applicants are required to submit a story. So I submitted a story I had done for Honors English my sophomore year of high school. I won like the prize in the two Honors English classes, because we were supposed to write a story using John Beck style language, and so I attached that as my writing just because I didn't really have anything else. And so now I'm going to go through a few pictures for the school, the visual arts, and this is like one called Mind the Overlap, which was just a stupid pun about the subway metro system when they say mind the gap. This is a photo I took while in East London, which explains the title, using a TSLR camera to create this multiple exposure. I like how the two work together to fill more of the frame and give a dimensionality that would not have been there had I taken a single exposure. I like that idea where I use the word dimensionality. Obviously, like I said, you don't have to use big art words, but I do think there are words that aren't necessarily art terms, but have a lot of real meaning when talking about work, talking about how you knew that something was going to happen or how you wanted something to happen and give it that effect. This is a photo that I called The Male Gaze, and I said I included this in my portfolio because of how intense the model's expression is, especially in his eyes. I made it black and white to take the focus away from any distracting colors and bring the viewer's eyes back to his face. I think it is important, but why I mentioned I turn it black and white, I could have gone further with that, but I do think that was important to note. This is another double exposure I called Double Take, and I said, yet again, another Holga 120N double exposure from my trip to New York City. I like that the overlapping buildings give a lot of dimensional qualities to it, and the shapes that resulted move the viewer's eyes across the page. I took a similar photo on my first trip to New York City, so I wanted to experiment more during my second visit. So like I mentioned before that I like that I used the word dimensionality, I don't actually like how I used dimensional qualities. It seemed like I was trying a little bit too hard to say something that wasn't necessarily there or something, but I just don't like how I included it or wrote about it, at least in that way. And now for the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, there are only two other pictures that I haven't talked about. And this first one is called Disinterested, and I said a photo I took on a TSLR Seagull camera while at the Palace of Versailles. I was thinking about compiling all the photos I took on the trip of iconic places and people giving them no attention or being distracted by their phones. So I don't like this photo necessarily in a portfolio, but I do like that I included that I kind of had started to see themes or was thinking about kind of like a collection or a culmination of photos and just things that I was noticing. So I had taken quite a few photos of people, obviously not like they weren't necessarily enjoying the place, but that for a split second they were on their phone, not paying attention. And so I liked that I had begun capturing kind of people kind of ignoring iconic places and not paying them enough attention. So I do like that I kind of included that and how I was already kind of visualizing like a series. And lastly, the only other picture I included, which I really don't like, but my photography teacher at my high school really did like, and so she thought I should include it in a portfolio. It's just called Underway. I didn't give it any description, which I don't like, but it was basically just under the subway system in Brooklyn when I was in New York. And so I don't really think I should have included this, but I do think I should have given it some type of description. So those are all the places on Slide Room that I had access to that I could talk about and show you. I wish I could give you a little bit more of a walkthrough of how to do certain things, but it's pretty self-explanatory when you get onto the website. It just takes you step by step answering questions. I was actually going to cut out this part and not include me reading my Parsons Challenge essay, but I do think it is important to hear kind of like the reflection in my voice and how I meant things to come out. So I said, for a long time, my friend and I wanted to do a portrait shoot of her using only green screen and a projector. We experimented with some Van Gogh paintings, black and white film, and finally got around to projecting optical illusions on her face. It was not until then I got the photo that made it all worth it. Eventually I took the image into Photoshop, turned it black and white, and edited it edited it until it appeared unrecognizable. I then traced it, filled it with a Sharpie, and figured I could make a cool screen print from it. However, I was still not satisfied. I knew I wanted to challenge myself more conceptually as well as technically, and this desire had to be translated from a 2D piece into a time-based form. Originally, I thought creating a looped GIF image would be fun, but conceded that creating a video would be more challenging and labor-intensive. Now, I think this certainly helped my chances of getting into the school, kind of showing that I had a drive to challenge myself as an artist and to take things further with my work. Obviously, I only did this video because of the Parsons challenge, but I could have copped out way easily and just have made a shirt using the picture, or done something a lot more simple than what I had done. I think it is really important that you show that you are willing and wanting to challenge yourself, because going to an art school is just that. You go outside of your comfort zone as an artist and you do things you're not used to. And so I think when you show that you have a drive to make meaningful work and spend time on something, that it really shows in your work. And then I continued saying, the original photo of my friend is really interesting because it focuses on the shapes and lines of her face due to the dissection with the projector. I do not know how to explain what unworldly creation she was made into, but the white sweater she was wearing became some sort of tent-like structure that descended below her neck. The result was her looking more like an artificial intelligence than a human being. I decided to continue this project by using myself as the model to force myself to be more creative with angles and consider different shots that I may not have tried if I had used a model. It also allowed an environment of intimacy between myself and the camera because I could experiment without any fear of outside judgment. I could simply try a shot, and if it didn't work, then I did not use it. But every time I learned something about what could or could not work, and the project continued to evolve. This is the reason a lot of my artistic work happens when I am by myself. I can compare and contrast ideas and further execute them to be more successful. Now, I think it is really important, again, that I included that I did this all by myself, because it just seems a little bit more impressive that you can do these things by yourself, because then when you're in a team setting, then you can just do even more because you have the experience and expertise of other people. Since I'm a photographer, I love trying out unique ways of shooting, but my favorite way is the use of in-camera double exposure using film. Using my green screen and projector became the perfect way of layering clips to emulate this effect. However, this was a lot more challenging than clicking the shutter release a couple of times. There were so many moving parts that I had to maneuver. With film, you take 2 shots and they're made permanent through a chemical reaction, but digitally there are hundreds of different arrangements that can be made. This is where decisions had to be made to communicate my messages most effectively. The Parsons Challenge is an excellent way to understand applicants' style and creative capabilities beyond their preferred medium. Creating this video excites me about my potential future at Parsons, and I thank you for considering me in the admissions process. Now, I don't necessarily think that ending was entirely needed, but I do like that I talked about how going out of my comfort zone and making this video, I mean, obviously I've been doing YouTube for so long, I was familiar with video, but I wasn't as familiar as creating art through video than I had with photography. I just like that it showed my excitement for school, and it showed my excitement to be in an atmosphere where I was creating and pushing myself creatively and technically. I also think it was important when I include that information about how I enjoy multiple exposures and how using green screen and keying out those colors became a way of being like that style that I'm familiar with, just in a digital landscape and with video, which is not really commonly used. Green screen has its obvious purpose, but I don't think people capitalize on that more and pursue that idea further. So that's why I wanted to create this video in the first place. But that's pretty much all I have to show you about my portfolio. Do not hesitate to leave any questions you have in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Definitely give it a thumbs up if it is something that you enjoyed, or if you want to see more art in the future. And definitely subscribe if you want to see future videos. I have a lot of ideas coming out, and I'll see you guys next week with another video. Bye!
Questioning, and if you're not sure, then hey, I got some time so we can talk more. Got my fire on my outscore. What's your preference? Do you like rap or rock more? Whatever that you like, I got it all for you. So what it do? I got a lot more.